Greetings everyone, this is Rambling Collector, back here with another book review for all of you today. And I figured this one is going to be a lot of fun, because today I dive back into the world of Warhammer with the Iron Warriors Omnibus by Graham McNeill. And I have to say, you guys, it's actually been a while since I've reviewed a Warhammer book. And I figured what better way to do that than start with a small omnibus, such as the Iron Warriors. But, with that being said, let's get to talking about it. So first, let me go ahead and give my thoughts on the book overall. So first of all, this one is definitely one of the smaller Warhammer omnibuses out there, with a length of 600 pages. And what is contained within is, to put it simply, one novel, one novella, and a total of 5 short stories. But this does not just focus on the Iron Warriors as a legion. This, in fact, has a consecutive story to it. This actually chronicles the tales of a famous Iron Warriors character, Warsmith Hansu, and his campaign against the Ultramarines. Now, apparently, this is actually more of a side piece to the Uriel Ventress series, also done by the same author, Graham McNeill. Apparently, he created this whole elaborate story involving Uriel Ventress of the Ultramarines against Warsmith Hansu of the Iron Warriors. And essentially the Iron Warriors go on to do a campaign against Ultramar, which is the whole sector of the Ultramarines. Now apparently, the one thing I will say is that the Iron Warriors here, this is definitely during a much different time in Warhammer, because most of the recent books I have read are, how do I put this? They're more to the point, in my opinion. There's definitely a difference there. I'm not exactly sure what, but there is definitely something there. Maybe it's the setting, because most of the Warhammer books I have read have taken place after the fall of Cadia, where the Great Rift has opened up, the galaxy is completely divided, and unfortunately, everything is just going to hell even worse. Here, it doesn't feel as dire, because here, the Eye of Terror has not expanded to the Great Rift yet. Cadia is still standing, and this is more or less a focus on the Ultramarines facing off against insurmountable odds. So apparently this was during the Matt Ward days, where Warhammer lore was kind of in the tank. But I will say this much. Despite the time period that it was written in, the Iron Warriors Omnibus was definitely well done, with great descriptive writing done by Graham McNeill. And I will say this, a lot of Warhammer authors each have their own strengths. For instance, Aaron Dembski-Bowden really focuses more heavily on the combat aspect, at least that's just my opinion. I feel like while he does very well with describing the story, I feel like his greatest strength is definitely during the combat scenarios, because after reading his stories of Cadian Blood, as well as the Black Legion series, which really shines for his writing, in my personal opinion, I could definitely picture the fight scenes a lot more clearly than I could here with Graham McNeill. Graham McNeill, I feel he does very well at descriptive writing, giving us a picture of the setting that this is all taking place in, and the combat isn't bad either. The combat is very fluid, it's very well done with that sort of writing, but I feel like he more or less excels at descriptive writing of setting a scene, rather than the combat, if that makes any sense. But the Iron Warriors are definitely an underrepresented legion in their own right, especially with the fact of how they are experts at siege warfare. In other words, they are down and dirty, they are setting up fortifications, creating trenches, progressing slowly, breaking down fortresses, cracking them open to even the most fortified areas and breaking them down until they are nothing but ruins due to their continuous volleys of cannon fire and just sheer sundering cannon fodder. They are not afraid to make sacrifices to achieve the goal due to their strategic mindsets. And yet, there's also a deep bitterness. Because, let's face it, the Iron Warriors, apparently, lore-wise, in their history, they got stuck with some of the worst jobs, with high casualty rates, major fortresses that they had to crack, which would probably take them months to accomplish. So essentially the Iron Warriors were treated as more of the expendable soldiers back then. They were treated more to the meat grinder than any other legion during the Great Crusade, way back years ago, before the Iron Warriors fell to chaos. But here, you can definitely see their expertise in siege warfare at work. And I gotta say, it has been a while since I've dived into Chaos Marine books. My most recent that I can think of being, of course, the Emperor's Legion, or the Emperor's Children, I should say, my bad, the Emperor's Children Legion with the Fabius Bile trilogy, which I have reviewed in the past, and it was a lot of fun. I don't know what it is with Chaos Marines, but it's always fun to read about their quests for revenge, their different pursuits, and everything else of that matter. But I think I've rambled enough about the book itself. There are two main highlights for this collection that I want to talk about. The novel itself, Storm of Iron, and the novella, Iron Warrior. So let's go ahead and talk about those right now. Now then, Storm of Iron. In my opinion, this is definitely a great introduction to the Iron Warriors. Their culture, their combat style, everything. And it definitely helps that Storm of Iron had a lot of great characters, both on the Imperial as well as the Chaos Iron Warriors side, both of which had great characters. For instance, you have, of course, the titular character, Hansu, and it showcases his rise to power as a warsmith, as well as the people he had fought alongside, such as Kroger, a space marine who was more obsessed with the slaughter and bloodshed part of warfare, which definitely made him follow more on the path of Khorne than just simply following the other Chaos Gods altogether, as well as Ferrix, an Iron Warrior veteran who had been in a dull miasma for so long, and yet here in Storm of Iron he somehow gets his fire back. He is, I want to say, enraptured by the battle, which he has not been involved in for so long. So Hansu, Kroger, and Ferrix both made some very interesting characters, as well as the Warsmith himself, whom is never named, but you can definitely tell that he's a very influential character, judging by the fact that they all fear him, because apparently this Warsmith is on the precipice of becoming a demon prince, which is a major deal. Demon princes are feared for both in the warp as well as without, because they are just massive icons of power. So Hansu, Ferrix, and Kroger are all working to bring this Warsmith, bring down a fortress that the Iron Warriors themselves apparently raised in days gone by. Now it is their goal to return to it and break it down. But more than that is for the prize within, which is apparently a vast collection of gene seed, the stuff that is able to make Space Marines in the first place. More than that, though, Storm of Iron also showcased a lot of great character point of views. It showcases some plotting by the Mechanicus, who were actually infiltrated by the Dark Mechanicum, which is terrifying. Hansu himself is a fascinating character, especially when you have the Iron Warriors facing off against the Imperial Fists, their major rivals and most bitter of enemies. And I can't really say enough. Apparently Storm of Iron is apparently a major fan favorite among those who read the Chaos Marine books, or even just Warhammer fans in general. They love this story. And I can honestly see why. Graham McNeill did a fantastic job of making this as an introductory piece to the Iron Warriors, whom, in my opinion, don't get as much love as they probably should. The Emperor's Children, the World Eaters, the Night Lords, the Word Bearers, all of whom have had their own trilogy in one way or another. The Iron Warriors need more appreciation, at least in my perspective. Yes, they have an omnibus, but it contains only one novel. But if there's any other bits out there, I really do want to know, because they've caught my attention now at this point, mostly due to their efforts of siege warfare. And this was a definite highlight piece of that. Them constructing trenches, building up bunkers, setting up armaments to blast open holes into the fortress, all that stuff. Okay, I think I've rambled about Storm of Iron long enough. let's talk about Iron Warrior. Next up is the novella Iron Warrior. Now this one, while short, only a total of 6 chapters, was very impactful. It showcased the beginning of Hansu's crusade against the Ultramarines, and his first act was to infiltrate a massive floating fortress which contained a powerful demon lord, thus giving him an extra edge when he goes onto his campaign against Ultramar. And I've got to say, while it was short, it was definitely an action-packed little story. It shows them tracking down on the fortress, releasing the demon, how they campaign against the Ultramarines. It was fortress clashing against fortress, and you can definitely see Hansu appreciating getting back down to the ground again. Being at the core of what an Iron Warrior is, a siege trooper. And I've got to say, it was fantastic seeing Hansu being excited. Instead of sitting behind a command chair just leading his troops, he's out there in the ground, digging up trenches, building up fortifications, stuff like that. Hansu himself is a very interesting character, but he is also very twisted, especially with one of his big experiments known as the Newborn, which is this demonically possessed clone of Uriel Ventress, his hated rival. And I've got to say that is completely twisted, all things considered. But more than that, we actually get to see an Eversor assassin. And for those of you who are wondering, there are assassins in 40k, each of them very, very different. The Eversor, other than the Calyxus assassin, is one of the most terrifying. Eversor is when you want to perform a scorched earth policy. It is the equivalent of wiping out an entire planet and you want nothing to come back. You have a doped up warrior whose main goal, as soon as they are released from cryostasis, is to kill everything. The Eversor was terrifying to behold, but it was also really fascinating to watch it fight against the different bands of chaos. See, at this point, in a few short stories before this, Hansu was actually trying to recruit warriors for his campaign, and thus he actually enters the Maelstrom, which is owned by Huron Blackheart, leader of the Red Corsairs. The Maelstrom is like the Eye of Terror, but much more calm, much less out of control and wild. Hansu controls it with his legion of Red Corsairs. And from there, he actually unites different bands of chaos, from followers of Khorne, the Blood God, all the way to the Dark Prince Slaanesh. And they all join Hansu for a chance to pick at Ultramar, the big bastion of the Ultramarines, the sons of Rabute Guilliman. And I gotta say, they really did some damage here. Even despite the fact that they were up against a dreadnought that was a veteran of the First Company that had survived the first Tyranid invasion against Ultramar. They did a fantastic job writing this out. Graham McNeill did a fantastic job of describing this fortress as this huge bastion of all that is righteous and good, and you can definitely tell the Ultramarines were getting a lot of exposure here. But overall, Iron Warrior was definitely short, sweet, and I loved every second of it. But now, let's move on to random thoughts. And now for random thoughts. I will say, I did not know what to expect when I went into this novel, or this collection with the Iron Warriors, mostly because it had been a while since I dived into a Warhammer book. I think months now at this point, which is funny considering that Warhammer is one of the biggest sections in my book collection, as in taking up like 3 shelves worth of Warhammer. One of those sections is just full of omnibuses. And I won't lie to you guys, I am a huge Chaos Marine fan. I love some of the trilogies that they come out with. Some of my favorites thus far have been Fabius Bile, as well as the first book of the Ahriman trilogy, and of course the Black Legion books. The Iron Warriors was definitely a way for me to get back into it, though I am definitely psyched at some point to start on either the Word Bearers by Anthony Reynolds, or Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Night Lord series, which are the other 2 Warhammer Chaos Marine omnibuses that I currently have in my collection, which I plan to start at some point, I'm just not sure when. That might depend on you all. I might leave that to a vote in my community tab sometime, just to see which way I should proceed, whether loyalist or chaos. I'm not sure yet. But, in all honesty, why is it that the smallest omnibuses with the least known factions always have the most entertaining stories? This is not the first time I've had this happen. Another great example is the Masters of the Hunt, which is a White Scars omnibus. Now, for those of you who don't know, the White Scars are a loyalist Space Marine chapter, and they are even less known than the Iron Warriors, which is sad in my opinion. Like, a lot of these lesser known Space Marine factions have some fantastic stories to them, and I would honestly want to see more out of them. Hell, the White Scars at least have 2 novels to their name. The Iron Warriors only have 1 novel, not counting the Perturabo book, as well as a novella and a bunch of short stories to their name, all of which are focused on one character, Hansu. And Hansu himself is actually a fascinating character. He is what is known as a half-breed to the Iron Warriors, since his gene seed was half Iron Warrior, half Imperial Fist. So he was seen as a major, I want to say, stain to the Iron Warriors. He had to struggle and claw his way to the top just because of his blood, which makes him a very compelling character. Now, a lot of people have talked about the Demunculaba, a very demented practice that the Iron Warriors created to expand their ranks of soldiers. And I will say, it is a very demented practice, but it does not diminish the fact that I think the Iron Warriors are definitely underappreciated and need some more love and attention. I'm actually considering doing an Iron Warriors army at some point. Like, my current army that I actually use in Warhammer, the game itself, are the Thousand Suns. Mostly just because I'm a sucker for magic, and I will say, the Iron Warriors, though, with their Art of Siege Warfare, have piqued my interest. I want to read more, but I'm definitely interested to check out some of the other Chaos Marine factions as well. Anyways, with that being said, Hansu, I really want to learn more about him. I want to see him get a character novel at some point, where we talk about how, in God's name, he got a silver hand. Well, no. It does go into that in Storm of Iron. My bad, never mind. Scrap that idea. But I will say this book did leave off on a bit of a cliffhanger, because it shows the aftermath of Hansu's war, where apparently he's lost. Not surprising, of course, it's the Ultramarines, they're always going to win, of course. But I'm very curious to see more of the Iron Warriors after this. I want to know more of what they do. They're fascinating with the fact that they are just so bitter. They were the underdogs during the Great Crusade, being sent to some of the most bloodiest battlefields imaginable, and doing thankless, mind-numbing, and utterly bloody work. You will get no gratification among these warriors. It is simply do your duty and get it done. And in all honesty, the Iron Warriors are definitely one of the more united of the Chaos Legions, which is funny, considering the fact that they are Chaos Undivided. But I think I've ranted long enough at this point. If you guys are actually interested to see my thoughts on the Masters of the Hunt Omnibus, I'll leave a link to it for you all to check out, either in the description or up here for you all to find on a tag. I would definitely recommend it, though, if you want a lesser-known faction on the Loyalist side. Okay, with that being said, let's move on to the score. So all in all, I feel comfortable putting the Iron Warriors Omnibus at a solid 10 out of 10. Great story writing, great progressive story showing the rise and fall of Warsmith Hansu, and in all honesty, after getting back into Warhammer, this I feel was a great start, and one I hope to do of more Warhammer books in the future, because let's face it, I've collected so many at this point, it's not even funny, and I definitely need to do a dive into them at some point in the collection, just to narrow them down a little bit, you know? Maybe I'll tackle more omnibuses. Maybe I'll just tackle more one-shot stories. Who knows? But if you are interested in a lesser-known faction in the Warhammer universe, definitely give the Iron Warriors a try. Graham McNeill is a fantastic writer, and I do recommend more of his style. And at some point, I might actually pick up his Uriel Ventress series, just to see more of the Ultramarines versus Iron Warriors campaign. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for listening to this crazy man's ramblings, and if you have any book suggestions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like as well, and if you like what I do here, or if you have stayed till the end of this video, why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? It would definitely be a great help to me, and it would definitely help the channel a lot more to grow. And once again, thank you so much for listening once again to this crazy man's ramblings. I hope that I can continue to provide the great entertainment that you all expect from me. And I hope that my words inspire you all to read more often, to find a new book to check out for yourselves. Alright, you guys, I've talked long enough. This is Ramble and Collector signing off for now. Have a great day, my fellow readers.